There we go. Yes, brother, welcome. So
yes, greetings, Pan-African greetings to everybody. Thank you for joining our session today. We are going to have a presentation by our Sister Portia, for whatever time it's going to take, and then from there we will have a Q&A session, contributions, questions, additions, however you feel. Feel free to participate freely. This is a safe space where we guarantee safety of everybody to express their feelings, their thoughts as they wish without fear or favor. Having said that, Brother Kwame has welcomed you all. Again, I will take this opportunity to welcome you all once more. And at this juncture, I will call on Sister Portia to please lead us how she's going to do the presentation and what the presentation is all about. A small summary of what it is all about. Sister Portia, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elder. Welcome. Many greetings and thanks again to the Consciencism Study Group. Thank you, comrades. My name is Portia C. I will not be doing the geopolitical analysis this week because I want to take time for this presentation and not feel rushed. And thankfully, the chair, welcome, has granted me that. So before commencing my presentation on surmounting imperialistic propaganda with Alkebulanese-Formed Plans, I ask that we all persons here speak an ancestor's name. And this is how I've done it in previous Consciencism Study Group presentations when I'm presenting. So basically, you may unmute, and if you so choose, you can speak an ancestor's name after I count to 3. So, for example, I'm going to speak my maternal grandmother's name, Mrs. S.C. May Woods Pete. So I would say 1, 2, 3, Mrs. S.C. May Woods Pete. And it's just because this is a serious topic, and I know I need guidance from the ancestors to make sure that I am taking it with the seriousness that it deserves. So here we go. 1, 2, 3. Mrs. S.C. May Woods Pete. Thank you. And now you may mute back so that I can show the presentation, speak the presentation, and then of course there's no echoes in it. Now, just so you know that I'm a real person, I will turn on my video. I'll turn on my video, but then I'll turn it off because it's easier for me in my current situation just to have my video off. So let me do that now. I don't know if all of y'all can see me, but hi, everybody. Hello. Okay, thank you. The first page that you see of the presentation are names of Black women ancestors. That's to your left of the display screen. I placed the names of these Queen Sisters here on the first page to honor them with their contributions towards the unification and liberation of Africa and its diaspora. Many times in these discussions, not saying that it's intentional, the women are not spoken. Readily, we can have a man's name. Like I know, for example, Revolutionary Thomas Isidore Noel Sankara. I know Revolutionary Patrice Emery Lumumba. Equally, there is, of course, Mrs. Fannie Lou Hamer. There's Mrs. Unita Zelma Blackwell. There's Revolutionary Nome Zamo, Winifred Zanyiwe Madikizela Mandela. So I wanted to equally call to the Black women ancestors in this topic. And in the middle of that same screen, there are signatures that show participants of a Pan-African conference from my image source. And these are signatures of participants from the first Pan-African conference in 1900. Among those shown signatures, I see signatures by 3 women. Momentarily, I will show you the names of the 1900 conference delegates and organizations, as well as committees. More names of women can be seen there. Another image on this page 1 is an invitation for that 1900 Pan-African conference. Comrades, I want to give a bit of housekeeping. Throughout my presentation, some images aren't very readable, and these are, of course, archived images, not the actual image. So please, I ask your patience in that regard, and there might be words or phrases that you may deem offensive or out of date to the unification and liberation of Africa and its diaspora. I ask again your patience for such viewing or wording. And again, as Elder Welcome has said, this is a safe space. So if you have some reservations about wording that you saw, then of course there'll be time for you to share that. This presentation of mine is not to focus on the negatives or the ills of what happened after the revolution, or to be in a state of choose this one over in, for example, Zimbabwe rather than the one in Ghana. So I'm not doing an either or. What I am focused on is the past of these revolutions and its evidence-based applicability to defending Africa and its diaspora contemporarily from ills or harms. So sabotage, protecting Africa and its diaspora from sabotage, from COINTELPRO, all those things that go against the very essence of these revolutions. And then I've already asked Professor Kwame, and I really appreciate that he kindly did that, because I have said to y'all before that I have been experiencing homelessness. I am still in a place where I still don't have income, so it limits so much, yet I am not going to be woe is me. And so this is why I asked Professor Kwame if he can be changing the slides when I ask. And on the pages, if you look at the bottom right corner, you'll see a page number so you won't get confused when the slides, we may go rapidly. Page 4, please, Professor Kwame. Thank you. Okay, here now are the names of the 1900 Pan-African Conference delegates and organizations. And now you may go to page 6, Professor Kwame. Thank you. And these now are the names of the committees. Page 7, please, Professor. My presentation is titled Surmounting Imperialistic Propaganda with Alkebulanese-Formed Plans. It is Saturday, the 21st of March, 2026, and it is now, I believe, 18:19 Accra, Ghana time. So around 6:19 in the evening of Accra, Ghana. And the online forum is Consciencism Study Group. Page 11, please. In the movement publication by the then Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee of California, Volume 2, Number 10, November 1996, and those are the 2 pages that preceded this page. A subtopic on page 2 was, what is a revolutionary newspaper? Also on page 5, a subtopic was what we have to do. I aim to follow up both questions by focusing on a possible revolutionary movement that mitigates oppressive propaganda. To start my presentation, I will review 10 revolutionary movements that positively impacted Africa and its diaspora. Next, I will show some overall linkages among said movements that are specific to the unification and liberation of Africa and its diaspora. A proposed result is to show a feasible way for surmounting imperialistic propaganda with Alkebulanese-Formed plans. Critiques and additional feedback is welcome. Page 12, please. Terms. By Alkebulan, I imply African continent. I mentioned many sessions ago in Consciencism Study Group that even the term Alkebulan has its critiques. Some are saying that the term was not introduced to us by Alkebulanese, but rather by external people or external faith, people of a different faith. The research that I have seen, it is one of the earliest names associated with the African continent. And of course, when we think of African continent in the contemporary boundaries of today, it is in a different context. It is a name that I choose to say. Alkebulanese implies Africans and African diasporans. Pan-Africanist implies Africans and African diasporas who live I am because you are. I know that this phrase has gotten away where it comes off like it's not a strong phrase. I am not speaking of it in that regard. I'm speaking of it in indigenous African community ways where we were protecting our communities. We didn't tolerate nonsense, and we knew that everything we put out into the universes would come back to us, be that in a person, be that in a bird, be that in the soil of the land. So this is, when I think of a Pan-African, it is a person who is living that, even if they are flawed. Movements, revolutions are implemented ideas that have positive, healthy impacts on communities and additional beings. And positive healthiness is sustainable actions that reciprocate nourishment and connection. A king brother, I didn't get permission to say his name, but a king brother in a previous session, he had put this in the chat, and I thought it was so encompassing of what we really are about indigenous African communities. It's nourishment and it's connection. And then some of you, I would dare say all of you, are familiar with Mayat. It has two definitions from the sources I've went to, and that is ancient Egyptian goddess of truth, justice, harmony, and balance. Also signifies the broader ancient Egypt ideas of truth, order, harmony, law, morality, and justice. Page 13, please. Clarifications. I have been saying this, if you listen to old tapes of me, you'll see that I always am saying this. It's a same point, and I keep saying it on purpose. In Racism in Everyday Speech and Social Work Jargon by David R. Burgess, 1973, Burgess refers to Ossie Davis's English Language is My Enemy, 1967. To summarize, Burgess explains how Davis found at the time that the word whiteness had 134 synonyms, 44 of which are favorable and pleasing to contemplate. 10 synonyms for whiteness appeared to have negative implications, and these in the mildest of sense. The word blackness had 126 synonyms, 60 which of which are distinctly unfavorable and none of them mildly positive. So the English language is an oppressive language, and I have written about this. So I am unfortunately speaking in the English language. And again, I know there are critiques about that. We were always travelers, so we were very multilingual. I am talking about in the context of where our languages, if we spoke them in North America, specifically United States of America, our ancestors could have a leg taken away, could have fingers removed, could have eyes bulged out for speaking an indigenous African language. So I am unilingual. I have stopped my Kiswahili classes given my current unhoused circumstances. I, as a way of revolution or a way of stating it, naming it, I do say that English language is an oppressive language. So the words even that are on this, we look beyond their meaning, because even their meaning sometimes can be oppressive, in my opinion. And then by imperialistic propaganda, I am talking about utilized newspapers, television, internet, curriculum, geography, junk food, travel destinations, passports, visas, fashion, infrastructure, politics, racial capitalism, and other ideological tools so as to dictate and cause confusion within Alkebulan and among Alkebulanese. Such orchestrated confusion allegedly is carried out by, for example, the governments of Australia, Belgium, England, France, Germany, Spain, Portugal, Italy, the Netherlands, and the United States of America. Are there any questions or concerns at this point? Okay, I see no objections or no concerns voiced. Let me just check the chat. Okay. For some initial context of oppressive propaganda, page 15, please. I will note Ancestor Diop's rebuttal points in a phrase. Okay, so you'll see a little green dot, and that's just to let me know that that's where I'm speaking from. And I quote Ancestor Diop, quote, "Ever since the birth of science of Egyptology, the number of books published on the one question of the color of the skin of the ancient Egyptians would make up a whole library. This is because they didn't tell it like it was, but they preferred to speculate, most of the time on the very meaning of the words they used." Page 19, please. Quote, "One regrets the disorder and the negligence, above all, of the first searches through Egyptian tombs, the fact that these searches were conducted without essentially the participation of African specialists who did not yet exist." Now, I counter that the African specialists did not exist, yet I take the point of what Ancestor Diop's rebuttal is basically, and you may have seen that with the I Show Speed, when I Show Speed, and thanks to the Queen Sister who did that presentation, and the King Brother who also critiqued the Queen Sister, on the I Show Speed, he was asking in that segment, why is the nose blown off? And the response to that, when he was talking, there was there was discussion on how it was kind of glossed over. So by oppressive propaganda, and how the point of where I shall speak question, why is the Sphinx nose like that? And then the kind of gloss over response that was given to him, it links to what Ancestor Diop is saying. And that is oppressive propaganda. It is constantly lying to us in this English language and telling us that what we are, who we are from the earliest of time, for example, Egyptian civilization, Kemet civilizations, and even before that, that we are not of those civilizations, that we, Africa and its diaspora, are a part. So what Ancestor Diop did, and what I would call, it was a spiritual philosophical resolution, because in this oppressive system, racial capitalist system or systems, it is all about, well, what is your evidence? What facts do you have? And the counter argument that I give to that point is the facts that we have been given are not even facts, arguably, because as you see, and I'll give a copy of this whole PDF so you can read it for yourselves. If not, you have already read it. You can see that all that they were talking to us about Egypt has been lies. And even to date, in 2026, when we bring up these arguments and challenge what they, the oppressors, call facts, it is assumed like we are just trying to latch on to a culture that is not ours, which of course is not true. Indigenous Africa, the earliest of civilizations, is us. It cannot be denied. And you can see that arguably in the melanin. And Dr. Ben, of course, and other Africanists, Pan-Africans wrote in depth about this. So in this regard, oppressive propaganda is the enemy, and a racial capitalist system or systems that enable such propaganda are also the enemy. So we have this situation where you have Dr. Ben, you have Ancestor Diop doing this type of spiritual revolution, and what happens in that revolution, which is always of the enemy, is it tries to make it look like they are crazy. They just are latching on to a civilization that there is not theirs. So why I bring this up, and why I keep bringing it up in prior Consciencism study groups, is to grant and give us a Kibilan and his diaspora grace, that during all our arguments or our disagreements or maybe our missteps of wording in an English language, because that by and large is how we communicate in this Consciencism group, and I would dare say in other groups of Pan-African that are around, that to grant us that grace with what we're going through, when we overeat, when we have health issues, when we gossip, when we backbite, when we have other ills, because those are coming out of a racial capitalist system or systems. They are not indigenous to us. This does not imply that there should not be accountability or acknowledgement when we have harm someone. That is very much necessary, and that goes back to the I am because you are. I contend again to know our enemy is not our lands, and it is not our people. Our enemy is oppressive propaganda, a racial capitalist system or systems that enables such propaganda and has beget all of those things that I mentioned earlier: wars, debt, unhoused, like I am presently. Page 22, please. Thank you. So another revolution, and I've just mentioned one revolution, another revolution that happened is our cultural revolution. And so what I appreciate about this document and the document that I'm reading from, pardon me one second, just getting my PowerPoint right. The document I'm reading from is the Pan-African Cultural Manifesto, Organization of African Unity, First All-African Cultural Festival, Algiers, July, August 1969. Now, I'm well aware that there are persons who are just really done with organization of AU, the then organization, and also the African Union. I comprehend that well. Again, I'm not talking about us critiquing that. I'm saying, what can we look at these documents that I'm showing you, and how does that align with our contemporary focus on revolution? So here in this document, and you can see I'm reading on page 22 to the left, it says, culture starts with the people as creators of themselves and transformers of their environment. Culture in its widest and most complete sense enables men to give shape to their lives. Again, remember what I said about the wording. There can maybe be some women on this call who take offense to it only saying men. And then the next green dot, it is the vision of man and the world, and is thus systems of thought, philosophies, sciences, beliefs, arts, and language. It is likewise that the action of man on himself and on the world to transform it, and thus covers the social, political, economic, and technical fields. Culture is essentially dynamic. In other words, it is both rooted in the people and oriented toward the future. And now to the right, culture is the essential cement of every social group. Its primary means of intercommunication and of coming to grips with the world, the outside world. It is its soul, its materialization, and its capacity for change. Thus, culture is the totality of tangible and intangible tools, works of art and science, knowledge and know-how, languages, modes of thought, patterns of behavior, and experience acquired by the people in its liberating effort to dominate nature, and again, that's a sensitive word there, and to build upon an ever improving society. So we have had, and we have a cultural revolution that is taking place. And the most readily example, arguably, that you can see that is during the then COVID-19 pandemic, where we saw persons of African diasporans returning home. I won't speak to the challenges of that, and I'm mindful of what a Queen sister said about when we are talking of when we're coming home, are we bringing a racial capitalist or an oppressor type mindset? Because that is not of us in indigenous African communities. Nonetheless, we have a revolution that has been happening and is still happening, though it is trying to be thwarted, of a cultural revolution. Page 28, please. Thank you. So another revolution, and this is number 3, another revolution that we have had is a women's revolution. And here, I'll just read some of the points that are said here with this first conference of Mozambique women. And you saw even before that there was a first conference, and let me just get the name right. There was a first conference in Ghana at the University of College of Ghana, a conference of women of Africa and African descent in 1960. So there have always been movements. In this particular conference, the first conference of Mozambican women, it says, and I'm reading here to the left, the interest of the masses of people above all, that rejects every form of oppression and exploitation by an individual, group, class, or sex over others, and that seeks to establish healthy human relationships in the country. The struggle to liberate women occupies a prominent place in the revolution. And then to the right, still on the same page, among the tasks of the women's detachment are armed struggle, mobilization. We know that the women have been the organizers, the women have done the secretarial duties, which are, by the way, very equally important. Pardon me, I'm just admitting people while I talk. Thank you.
Sister Portia, don't worry about meeting people. We will do that. Just focus on the presentation side.
Okay, thank you. So we know that we have had, like at the first Pan-African conference, we had women who were doing the secretarial duties, you know, taking notes. We know that, and it is actually revolutionary to take notes. And then you saw when I was showing you some attendees there, and I see I may have need to be stand corrected. Those participants were at the 1945 conference, not the 1900. But either way, in addition to secretarial contributions, we had women armed struggle. We know we have had Kibilanese women who were warriors. That didn't start with 1960 or 1970, and we had them mobilizing, organizing, and defending the people, transporting materials, assuring production, recruitment, and security, working in nursing schools, which again, as El Hajj Malik El Shabazz has said, one of the most important people is the mother, because it is the child's first teacher. So a women's revolution has been taking place. Please, may you go to page 30, please. 29, pardon me. Thank you. So a women's revolution has been taking place and is still taking place. And by this example of the first conference of Mozambican women, we see here on page 29 that the conference emphasized that male workers are themselves exploited and oppressed in these societies, the same as women are, and that whatever reactionary ideas they may hold concerning women have been inculcated in them by the system in which they live. This paragraph really resonated with me, and there has been at times conflict among the sexes, and when I talk about sexes, I'm talking about biological sexes, and in the tradition of African culture. Now, all of you have known that I have done very advocacy, LGBTQIA advocacy. This is not what I'm talking now. I'm talking about biological women who in the movement were the teachers of children, at the same time were cooking the meals, at the same time taking the notes, at the same time having their menstrual cycles, pardon me, and having a gun. So we have always, our ancestors have always contributed to the revolution. It is against the system that is against the negative aspects of tradition and against colonization, imperialism. I'll wait to be challenged here, but I take a different view. I am not saying that everything in our society was glowing and everything. We had societies that were contributing. And if I were to compare and contrast it, which you know I detest comparing and contrasting, those of you who know me, to a racial capitalist system or racial capitalist systems, there is no comparison. There is no contrasting. Our systems were far ahead. Our livelihoods, our lifestyles, our mannerism, our languages. There's no way you could even say that this current system or systems we in is better than what we had. I strongly disagree with that. So may we go now to page 32, please. Thank you. So another type of revolution that we have had as Africa and its diaspora is what I call a solidarity unity revolution. Because again, the COINTELPRO, what it tries to do when it sees, because it's steadily watching, instead of it feeding people and having health care for all and having peace relations, it focuses its main task on trying to divide the people who are much about those things, feeding the people, giving them health care, giving them mental health care, listening to them, being in communion. So another reason why we have arguably this kind of solidarity unit revolution is because it comes after, or it comes alongside, the COINTELPRO mechanisms that just are about destruction. And this document here, you can see that in the Mozambique Unity Charter. And going again to the green points only, it says, we completely and unreservedly adhere to the prior responsibility of uniquely concentrating all of our efforts solely on the total and unconditional national independence of our country. We vehemently condemn clogged sectionists and isolationists based practically on self-interest and paltry scattered groupings, which in the country pave the avenue and success for our common enemies. So practically, we can see that there are revolutions where people may have disagreed, may have even talked bad of each other. At the end of it, though, they can also see that they have put that aside to come and be unified. And the easy example I can give is, of course, of El-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz and his metamorphosis. And I want to remind people here, as we do keep giving respect and honor and just all the miraculousness of our ancestors, we know they are human. El-Hajj Malik says to even himself, says on many of his speeches, if you go look, that he was living a foul life. He was a pimp, he was a hustler, yet that was not who he was. In a racial capitalist system, you gonna have hustlers, you gonna have pimps, you're going to have gang laws, because that's what the system is about. It's about ill, it's about destruction. Even amidst that, you see the metamorphosis of El-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz, where after his differences with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he was about what? The unity and solidarity of Africa and its diaspora. So this is another revolution that has been there. May you go to page 34, please? Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you so much for just doing this. It helps me so much. So another revolution or movement, I'm using revolution synonymous with movements, is the Black Power, Black Conscious revolution. And here is again an abstract. I wanted to go back rather than just again look at the critiques of each movement or revolution. And you can see, for example, this 1972 platform by the Black Panther Party. And it's so interesting because I was listening to a discussion on millennials unaliving capitalism, and that's a YouTube channel. And in this analysis, someone was saying, oh, pardon me, it wasn't millennials unaliving capitalism. It was colonial outcasts or outcasts. And in that discussion was saying that basically all of the government type programs in the United States of America, welfare, food stamps, they took that from the Black Panther Party of the United States of America. So again, instead of using that to let people feed themselves, have their independence, what did they do? We know what they did with Revolutionary Fred Hampton. So here you see clearly in these Black Power, Black Conscious Revolutionary, the articulation, because we are an intelligent people, we don't have to go to a perceived great university, whoever that's supposed to be, whatever university that's supposed to be, and we don't have to speak whatever type of English to be intelligent. It's just in us. It's in our DNA. It's in our souls. So you can see that with no guideline other than the readings that the Black Panther Party read in respect to the ancestors, you can see how the ancestors moved arguably, and then they come up with this point plan. We want freedom. Quote, we want freedom. We want power to determine the destiny of our Black and oppressed communities. We want full employment for our people. We want an end to the robbery of capitalists of our Black and oppressed communities. We want decent housing fit for the shelter of human beings. We want education for our people that expresses the true nature of the decadent American society. We want education that teaches us our true history and our role in the present day society. We want completely free healthcare for all Black and oppressed people. We want land, bread, housing, education, clothing, justice, peace, and people's community control over modern technology, end quote. So another revolution, page 43, please. Thank you. Another revolution and a movement that has been with us, Akibulan and its diaspora, is the disability revolution. And this picture shows it all because you can see the Black Panthers are talking about it. It did not take the quote unquote UN to let them realize that a person who has a different ability is still our person, still our people, and we honor that, because again, I am because you are. So I found this interesting. Now here I will approach a subject that is very delicate, and I am not trying to offend anyone, and if I do, you let me know when it's time to get questions and we speak on it. I will approach a very sensitive topic within our Akibulanese communities, and that is of sexual orientation, arguably even more controversial than the religious beliefs of Islam and Christianity. There is a continuing movement throughout Akibulan and its diaspora among some Akibulanese who feel isolated from Akibulan and its diaspora due to their sexual orientation. I speak, of course, as a heterosexual Black woman, and I do not live with a disability, a physical disability. I do have my eyes. I have to wear glasses, so that's a disability that I live with. So I speak as a heterosexual Black woman who has been negatively impacted by classism and economic poverty. And knowing and comprehending that, again, our enemy is not other, in a wider speaking, Akibulanese or Akibulanese diaspora. So separating the person from the system. Our enemy is oppressive propaganda. And remember also, Revolutionary Fred Hampton, he had the first Rainbow Coalition, and it wasn't rainbow in the sense of LGBTQIA plus persons. Remember what he did in getting different people who had totally different views from the focus of Black Panthers, and how he organized them to come together to focus on the issue at hand. So I say that to say that a person's sexual orientation isn't our Akibalan and its diaspora focus. Are we able to feed one another, house one another, care for one another, heal within our communities with each other? For example, from evidence-based research, Akibalanese diaspora, and I would dare say before the 15th century especially, haven't been about brutality and merciful killing of another life force because of their sexual orientation. This didn't imply that we condone it. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that we were never a people who were ravenous and cruel and inhumane. We were a humane people, a considerate people, an accountable people. So again, there is, I wouldn't call it a revolution or a movement per se, but there are those among us, among the Kibilanese, that do feel isolated from us, because the first thing when we see them is that they are trying to infringe on our culture. They are trying to damage our culture. And I'm saying, let us please kindly remember who is really our enemy. Page 45, please. Okay, thank you so much. So another revolution is a political revolution, and of course we can see this when we had the sovereignty under the racial capitalist systems, and systems, or after the colonialism. And I'm even cautious of saying that, but basically in the 20th century we can see a lot of political revolutions happening among Akibalan and its diaspora. And one of them particularly that I'll say here, and I couldn't see the original document. There are archives online, but I just couldn't get a photocopy of it. Yet I got this one, and I found the creed so wonderful, because again it goes back to how we really are as a Kibilanese, and that is that all human beings are equal, that every individual has a right to dignity and respect, that every citizen is an integral part of the nation and has a right to take an equal part in government at local, regional, and national level, that every citizen has a right to freedom of expression, of movement, of religious belief and association within the context of the law, that every individual has the right, and I'm quoting all this here, that every individual has a right to receive from society protection of his life, mindful of the word his, and of the property held according to law, that every individual has the right to receive a just return for his labor, that all citizens together possess all the natural resources of the country in trust for their descendants, that in order to ensure economic justice, the state must have effective control over the principal means of production. Page 50, please. So I have spoken about several revolutions that have happened, and I would dare say are still going on. So it's always been with us. It's not like it started, but we note certain periods of time where we could see it more, perhaps. And this one I struggled with because my bias is I'm so critical of the word intellectual in the English language sense. I know that, of course, when we look at Timbuktu or we look at Zimbabwe, we've always had universities, we've always had scholarship, we always had knowledge and learning. I struggle with the English language word intellectual, and in my personal experience, it has been that if you are not well read, or if your words don't come out a certain way, you cannot be heard, or at least that's how I feel. So I tend to think intellectuals can be bougie, as the young people say, And I struggle with that a lot. Nonetheless, there was and is an African intellectual revolution happening. And then another revolution, if you go to the next, you see on the next page here, we have an Africanism revolution. And of course, this is all leading up to the Pan-African revolution. And I would be remiss if I did not mention the youth revolution. I would dare see youth revolution or youth, I would see them as cross-cutting throughout all of the revolutions, because in all of the documents that I looked to, there is always someone talking about we got to reach our youth, we got to work with our youth. I never saw that it was absent from that. Page 55, please. Okay, I'm almost wrapping up here. Before I move to some linkages, now I'm going to the second part. I had 3 parts of my presentation. I've done the first, which is going through the 10 revolutions or movements. And now before I move to some linkages, which is the second part among these said movements via Revolutionary Sankar's words. So I want to look at those linkages because I think in his speech, this speech, quote, why we must fight against imperialism together, end quote, done on March 17th, 1985, it just so accurately sums up all of these different types of revolution and what the revolutions were prioritizing. So he talks about having pride in ourselves on, in this case, having constructed schools, clinics, and dams, building roads, increasing our farmland, and carrying out reforestation. So you can see here that this is a cultural revolution that's happening through his words. And then he talks about the importance in effort we have to transform people's attitudes with this. And then he says everyone has something to say. Each one of us demands an accounting from another. So I can see there obviously the Black consciousness movement happening there. And then of course, you can see the spiritual revolution happening there. And then he goes on to say that the most important aspect of revolutionary is to transform our mentality. So I thought that when I saw that, how it just summed up. Page 56, please. And I am going to go through all his speeches because he's showing the linkages. His speech is linking to the revolutions that I have shown you. And I'm only going to share the green points because obviously it's a lengthy speech. And I encourage you to read it if you haven't. So he says there's quite a difference between theory and practice. And imperialism has no conscience. It has no heart. Fortunately, the more that we have discovered how dangerous an enemy imperialism is. And then he goes on to say that at the beginning of these revolutions, when we get involved, we're excited. We want to be involved. And I think about, I know there are critics about the X movie by artist Spike Lee, but in that movie, I remember that scene where that guy, after seeing El Hajj Malik El Shabazz stand up to that white police officer, and he's like, we will leave, there's the accountability, when we know that the brother is okay. And the guy there, he had never seen, according to the character, he had never seen a Black man, stand his ground. And when he went in and El Hajj Mali's there, they were discussing what they're going to do next in the diner. And the guy, he's so excited. He's like, sign me up. And so we do have that. And you can even see that in different forms that are happening. We have the gusto that we're ready to get involved, yet there's sacrifices. their sacrifices, if we're talking about giving up this racial capitalist system or systems, that ain't gonna be pretty. That's having no Netflix, for example. That's maybe not having a cappuccino or whatever vice. For me, it's Reese's cups. I love Reese's cups. And I used to love Coca-Cola until I realized they may contain bioengineered ingredients now in the United States of America. So we got to give up, we got to sacrifice for these revolutions to continue and to be the way we know they can be. And he goes on to say, Ancestor Sankara, that when they learned that it would be a little difficult, they began to pull back. This consciousness has allowed us to make a great leap forward. So we are in a process of setting up, and these again are Ancestor Sankara words, we are in a process of setting up a framework for those elders who want to participate in the revolution. So yes, we include our youth, we include as many as possible. We welcome as many as possible. We have our ground rules, but we welcome many as possible. We don't try Africa and its diaspora, a Kibilanese and its diaspora, to ever mimic a system that we know is not good for us. And he says, we have given, Ancestor Sankara says, we have given them the time to bring their revolutionary role to fruition. Next page, please. It should be page 57, and then I'll wrap up. So on this page at the bottom right, he says the revolution in Africa faces this great danger every time it's initiated by the petty bourgeoisie. Next page, please. Thank you. So he goes on to talk about why he's critical of the petty bourgeoisie. And it took me going through being homeless to finally get what people were saying about the bourgeoisie. Because when I was talking Africa and revolution, I had food to eat. When you don't have food for days, when you don't know where you're going to stay, when you have no money, that's when it hits. Are you really about the revolution? And I'm not saying people have to be hungry to be revolutionaries. I'm just saying I really learned if I was really just talking SHIT or if I was really about it. So next page, please. And he goes on, but I love when he says, that's why I agree, Ancestor Sankara, with you on the need for communication and mutual understanding. As revolutionaries, we don't have the right to say that we're tired of explaining. I love that. We must never stop explaining. Our only enemies are the imperialist regimes and organizations. So in conclusion, a feasible way for surmounting imperialistic propaganda with a Kibilanese-Formed plan is to, one, have an ancestral way of acknowledgement and accountability that ensures authenticity of where we are, and in that we are protected, we're safe, and we're secure to deal with those issues that are surely going to come up as we try to get out of these systems, these racial capitalist systems. And accountability is necessary, because if we don't have that accountability, you can see how it is in these racial capitalist systems. There's no accountability. Just going into people's lands, not even greeting them, and taking away people, and just starting wars. I mean, out of order. And in indigenous and Kibilanese communities, we always were about order. That's why if we're on a call and it may get heated, I notice how we always change so that we can still, at the end of it, no matter our arguments, we still are ending with love or beginning with love. That's ancestral. We show respect. For example, in our local communities, for example, we could start bartering systems, if not already. And I always look at it like, in the community that I am, Do I know my neighbors? Do I know what they're going through? Because I would say arguably with family, even though for the record, I have said that I have been estranged from my family. That's my own issues that I'm walking through, but now I've reunited. Arguably with family is easier because family, we know, we could trust them. Yet someone we don't know who looks like us, who might be struggling with drug addiction, who might be struggling with alcoholism, how are we working with that person so that they can get away from that vice? And if we go back to our indigenous African communal systems, we can ensure that no one is hungry, no one is unhoused, for instance. Remember, back in our indigenous communities, the idea of someone being unhoused, hungry, it was like it didn't even you couldn't even imagine it exists. And we cannot please also in this focus of for example, we do not abandon those who are incarcerated, those who are traumatized, those among us who have mental challenges, among us who have anger issues. Again, I am not saying we don't hold them accountable, yet just throwing them away, that's what a racial capitalist system does. So in our communities, do we know our people? And another thing that is throughout all the revolutions I talked about is self-protection. I never read any revolution that was saying someone come up and knock us on our head or beat us down and we just sit there and take it because we want to be the bigger person. Nah, it is innate in us to self-protect ourselves and our communities. So again, with bartering systems, I would dare say that we can have these protection classes because I know arguably we think that we don't have a lot of resources. When you look at that, it's 12 billionaires who control most of the economic wealth in the world. That is the illusion they want us, the oppressors, to think that we cannot do anything because we don't have a piece of paper. And of course, another thing that I didn't mention here, but the Nation of Islam did when El Hajj Malik was there. They were talking about healthy lifestyles. So what are we eating? I talked about the bioengineered food. I have a paper, 2024, how they have no evidence, according to this paper, that the effects that bioengineered ingredients will have on a human being's body. Yet here in the United States of America, for more than some years, bioengineered food is in sugar, in corn, in sodas. So, how we eat and having trauma-informed care, having revolutionary education. These are things that we can do, which I continue to promote about the bartering system, even if we don't have, quote unquote, a lot of money. Among us here on this call, I know we have a Queen Sister working on a curriculum for this Consciencism Study Group. Among here, we have a King brother who's a farmer. Among us here, we have a griot who can talk about this happened in this year and this happened and that happened. Among us here, we have wisdom and knowledge to build again the very indigenous structures that our ancestors live. So what is a first step? As artist Kendrick Lamar rapped about, even though it was arguably, some people say, a contradiction, him being at the Super Bowl, he still said, turn the TV off. In context, most of our lives should not be engaged with a electronic device. I know I'm guilty of it. So I've started in these past 2 weeks that I don't turn the TV on until the later afternoon. And then I turn it off around like midnight. And if I'm on an electronic device, I'm working on something that's relevant with these additional revolutionaries. Another practical example is to be present, as I have already said, with our family and communities, especially the communities, because I would dare say it's easy to engage with our family. And what I mean by that is to pour into each other, grant our grace, still keep us accountable. But if I've offended you, if I've done you wrong, instead of going to tell somebody else that we've done that wrong, that you've done me wrong, come to me so that we can work it out, because our enemy is not ourselves, arguably. And Black women, I say, don't overwork. Black men, I say, don't overcompensate. Rather, keep being authentic in what we are really feeling and the struggles we face. Don't be around just to be around our people in echo chambers. I'm only hanging out with them because they talk and sound like us. El Hajj Malik El Shabazz, and y'all see I keep bringing him up because he's one of my ancestors that I love so much. He was always going into the communities, and that's how the Nation of Islam, in my opinion, got such on the radar internationally. I've talked about another example is the food that we eat. I know food is expensive, yet there's some food that's not expensive that we can be eating, because we got to stay away from what I call those white and bleached foods, white potatoes, white rice, white sugar, and walking. Not saying you got to not saying you got to run, but walking, stretching. If you don't got walking shoes, I don't have walking shoes, so I stretch. Loving you is a form of revolution, to quote the Queen's sister. I'm forgetting her name, and I'll get that in the chat. And I've talked about trauma-informed care. Remember what Nana Dr. Julia Hare said so wisely, quote, since they have said that 14% of Black men cannot vote in this country has because they are convicted felons. You know, any Black man in this country, she's talking about the United States of America, is amazing that they're not convicted of something. You know, they want to survive. So in this regard, how many of our people are functioning with trauma and thinking all is okay? But when you're with them, you can see that that's trauma talking. Their ancestral ways to address trauma and have trauma-informed care. And then I've talked about the revolutionary education. One of the things that I saw consistently throughout the revolutions that I mentioned, those 10, they were writing. There was a king brother, an elder, who was saying last year, we got to just write. We just got to write. Just write. Get it out there. And not just in this electric format. Get it printed. Get it out there, writing, documenting. And if you don't have an archive, have an archive, so when we pass on, people can see who was this person. And of course that implies having protection. A lot of the documents that I sourced and saw, they are not with us. We know how they did our African art, so we got to be able to own and have our archives. And just to say about how important revolutionary education is, and then I will wrap up with a quote, is the other day I went to the store to get a scratch off lottery ticket. Here they have these tickets where, you know, you can win 5,000, 10,000. Of course, it's a scam. There are some people winning. So, you know, I'm always thinking I can win, but I don't spend a lot of money on it. But anyway, I went there to buy a lottery ticket, and the cashier's name, the server's name was Malik. And so I smiled because El Hajj Malik El Shabazz. And I said, hey, I said, you know, your name is similar to El Hajj Malik El Shabazz, you know, Malcolm X. And the cashier, he, you could see on his face, he got to kind of look like, I can't read his mind, but he looked like he didn't want to be associated with Malcolm X. And he was like, oh, I didn't get named after Malcolm X. I know of Malcolm X, but, you know, that's not me. And then I just smiled to him. I said, yeah, I say, when I see your name, I think of El Hajj Malik El Shabazz. And upon me leaving, after he gave me the 2 tickets, he said, I didn't know Malik was in El Hajj Malik El Shabazz. So revolutionary education is not necessarily curriculum only or having a big school and church. Revolutionary education is just sitting with somebody on the corner and just talking with them and learning about what they know and sharing what you know. It's healthy that to see that always the seed that's planted does grow. We grow even if even if it's concrete. And steadily, assuredly, we leave this capitalist system and systems. It's not us. So we prepare for that. We have ways of preparing and be ready to do that. That's the sacrifice. All that I shared above is from past revolutions, and I've given you the linkages to ancestor Sankara of those 10 revolutions. Then I've said, in my opinion, some ways that we can do stuff today that doesn't cost a lot of money through our bartering system, because our ancestors' wisdom and knowledge is revolutionary. I reiterate, returning with our indigenous Akibalan communities and healthy ways of life is revolutionary. Thousands of skyscrapers in our communities isn't revolutionary. Starlink isn't revolutionary. No, not trying to knock anybody who using it. Just read up on Starlink. It is not revolutionary. The United Nations isn't revolutionary. Netflix isn't revolutionary. Ain't nothing revolutionary about a racial capitalist system or systems. Our ancestors can, and our ancestors have shown us we are revolutionary. To this, I'll close with some words from Ancestor Shabazz. And Ancestor Shabazz says, it is no accident, quote, it is no accident such a high state of culture existed in Africa, and you and I know nothing about it. Why, the man knew that as long as you and I thought we were somebody, he could never treat us like we were nobody. So he had to invent a system that would strip us of everything about us that we could use to prove we are nobody. And then it goes on into the end of the speech, which I dare say I've read before, and I'm sure you heard before, and I read now. We don't care how rough it is. We don't care how tough it is. We don't care how backward it may sound. In essence, it only means we want one thing. We declare our right on this earth to be a man, to be a human being, to be respected as a human being, to be given the rights of a human being in this society, on this earth, in this day, which we intend to bring into existence by any means necessary. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sister Portia. I'm sure everyone in the meeting has listened attentively, and your presentation has sunk in, and it is going to make a difference in our approach to life. Again, before I hand over to Brother Kwame, thank you very much and welcome to our comrades who have joined us while the presentation has kicked off. Brother Kwame.
Yes, brother, welcome.
Please chip in. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Let's proceed with hearing what others have to say. Thank you. Yeah, Q&A and discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Kwame. I thought you wanted to have a small chip in, but it's fine. Comrades, Pan-Africanists, revolutionaries, the meeting is open to everybody to make their additions, to ask questions. And so we kick off on that note, and anybody who has got any contribution, please raise your hand and let me call you to the podium. On a count of 3, if I don't see any hands, I'll start. Thank you. Archbishop, I have seen in the chat you have already introduced yourself that you are the Archbishop of one church in the US, and I recognize your hand. Please take the floor and let us hear what you want to share with this August platform. Thank you. Archbishop, floor is yours. Archbishop John Milton, unmute yourself and let us hear your contributions. Thank you. Archbishop, you have unmuted. Still, I cannot hear you.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, Archbishop.
Well, I'm not indicating that I am muted.
We can hear you, Archbishop. Please proceed.
Okay, thank you very much. I just wanted to say thank you for the invitation to listen to this presentation and to join with those of you who are true Pan-Africanists and understand that the work continues. I'm sure I don't know hardly any of you, if any, but I would love to continue this dialogue and continue to share and learn and love with you all. And I just want to say thank you. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you so much, Archbishop. I've taken note of that. Yes, please. Brother Pigeon.
Yeah, Brother Window, thank you. It's a pleasure to see Reverend Milton. He's a comrade I've interacted in Nairobi here. And I think I created a new broadcast list. So many people have joined us today out of the extra broadcast list. And I'm happy to see Reverend Milton. We've been in Nairobi here for Pan-African issues. And I think he's back in America. So happy to see him and alongside the other new comrades who have joined us as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Pigeon. Anybody else with a contribution, question, any addition? I don't see any hand up. On a count of three, I'll start calling randomly for possible contributions. Brother Ifo. Do you have anything to contribute tonight?
Yes, I do. I'm, as usual, doing some food. So give me 5 minutes and I'll come in after the next person.
Eating alone again?
Yes, but that being said, I absolutely love it all.
Just cooking alone and not eating alone.
I'm not eating alone either. I try not to do that too often, but if it has to happen, it happens because you must eat. I'll be back.
Thank you. Go ahead.
No, I said I will come back after if someone else want to call on someone. Okay.
Thank you, Brother Ivo. Brother Brian Ogola, I recognize your hand. Please unmute. You are unmuted. Come onto the podium, please.
I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad to participate on today's session. This is my first time here, and I like this kind of conversation about us, where we are from, where is our history, and how maybe we can come back to full consciousness of it. So I was invited here by a good comrade of mine called Pigbin Odimwengo. I just had him speak some minutes ago, and it's really good conversation going there. So for the scope of this discussion, I'm well settled in. It's a good opportunity to learn. Though I don't want to go outside the scope of it, so I'll just give my gratitude today and be open to hear from other members. So this is good. Thank you.
A hearty welcome, Brother Brian. Feel free.
So, brother, welcome.
Yes.
As many are not speaking, I want to raise a question for Sister Portia, the presenter. So Our Saturday sessions are for unification sessions. This is where we meet to be part of the conversation to unite Africa, because Africa is still not united. Our people want to be united. And the very first image that our sister shared was if I go back to page 1, you'll see that it's to do with the invitation by Brother Sylvester Williams. There's a Pan-African conference on the right in Westminster Town Hall, and the same hall that we held a Pan-African meeting some years ago, recently. So this invitation was for what I think is the first Pan-African conference, and it was called by Brother Sylvester Williams of Trinidad, I believe. And this is the first of its kind. And then from here, this was in London, and then some were held later in America. Then they came back to London, and the last one in London was in 45, and then it returned to the continent. Then it came back to the continent under the CVP government of Ghana in 1958. The meetings, when we hold our Saturday meetings like today, we want to be part of this continuing conversation, because what our brothers like Sylvester Williams were pursuing has still not been achieved, which is that Africa can do whatever it likes. Africa can roll in the sand. Africa can complain and say this and say that and hold all the conferences it likes and do whatever it wants. But until Africa is united, until the African people unite, we will not see a transformation on the continent. So the most important question today is the unification of the continent from Cape to Cairo. So that is the issue today. And whatever our leaders are doing, whatever anyone is doing, that is the most important thing on the table. So if you like, this presentation is reminding us, especially this first page, how far we've come and how far we have to go. So what I wanted to ask our sister who presented is, she spoke eloquently, but I feel she did not link all that she said to unification. So I would really appreciate if she could kind of address to address the relationship between her presentation and the unification of Africa. Then the second point I want to draw to her attention is one can argue that she didn't tell us what a revolution is. She used the word a lot. But what is a revolution? Now, in our CSG classes, for those who don't know, CSG stands for Consciencism Study Group. We have a clear definition of what a revolution is. So it would be nice if our sister could tell us, what is a revolution? What is it about the Black Panthers social program that makes it a revolution? Is it a revolution? Or was it a revolution? Or was it just reform within the capitalist system? So that we get clarity, because part of our session is also to bring conceptual, ideological, and philosophical clarity to those of us who meet in this space. I think to summarize, two things. What is the link between what our sister has shared eloquently and unification? That's number one. Number two, what is a revolution? And how does what she said make it a revolution? Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Kwame. Before Sister Portia, just hang on a little bit.
Okay.
Hang on a bit. Before you answer, I have a hand here by Sister Amma. Can we just hear quickly what Sister Amma's contribution is, and then you can gladly come in after her hand. Sister Amma.
Hello, good evening. Maybe it makes sense for Sister Portia to respond to the questions raised before I come in. I don't know. Yeah, so Sister Portia, if you want to go ahead of me, that's fine.
Thank you, Chair. May I go ahead? Thank you, Queen Sister.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right. Professor Kwame, thank you for your critique. I said there were 10 revolutions that have been consistent throughout Africa and its diaspora. They are spiritual revolution, cultural revolution, women's revolution, solidarity, unity revolution, Black power, Black conscious revolution, disability revolution, political revolution, African intellectual revolution, Africanism revolution, and Pan-African revolution. And I said youth were cross-cutting through those. And before I began, I did a terms page. So if you go back up to terms on page 12, I gave the term movements and revolutionary. I was using those synonymously. And I'm mindful of the definition of this class. What I was trying to do with these terms was to say it plainly, because it's obviously such a heavy topic. And I said basically it's implemented ideas. So we are walking the talk. That's a movement of revolution. If we want health care, then we are working with our communities to make sure everyone have access to health care. So they're going to impact on us in a healthy and a positive way. And then underneath, I define positive and healthiness. And I said they are sustainable. So not only am I getting health care, I'm learning how to use herbs to take care of myself, so that every time if I get sick, I don't have to run to my other community member. I'm now growing my own herbs. And that's connecting, that's nourishment. And not only that, I'm sharing what I've learned, and they are sharing what they've learned. So I attempted to do that plainly. And then after I said that, because I wanted the audience to see how all of this stuff is saying the same thing, I went to Ancestor Sankara's speech against imperialism. And in those points that I highlighted, where he talked about imperialism is the enemy, where he talked about we got to work on our mind, where he talked about that starting the revolution is easy, but sustaining it is hard, and where he talked about having the roads and doing stuff for ourselves, that was all in those 10 revolutions. So then it came to the third point of, well, what can we do actually? Because one of the things when he was talking about Ancestor Sankara, that theory is different in practice, because he was talking about how he really saw when he became a leader how imperialism worked. So when we're sitting in this group, which is very important, when we're in this group, it is a theorized thing, though all of us are doing our different things. And we also have some comrades who have lived in revolutions. They've been in it, in some of these revolutions I talked about. Still in contemporary times, what are we doing? So then I tried to say what we can do. And it was what those revolutions are doing, not looking into how they had got into COINTELPRO, or how they ended up getting into fights and the movement stopped, or how somebody got killed and then after that the movement stopped. No, saying that each one of us can do some practical stuff. We can learn how to self-protect ourselves. We can go to the ancestors to learn indigenous ways of how we are going to work, not just in our families, but in our communities, to get away that intergenerational trauma. We can eat right. We can have access to trauma-informed care. We can have revolutionary education. And again, not in such a way that it's a full classroom, but just talking with people and saying, hey, did you know about this? Did you hear about this? And then on top of all of that, because money is tight, in addition to reducing our social media, what we can do is we can invoke again the barter and trade. In England, for example, and among the Caribbean communities there who are of African descent, they have a forum where someone, if they need money, they can borrow from that system. So they don't have to go to the banks who are going to reject them. So this is my answer practically of what we can do. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sister Portia. Brother Kwame, does that answer your question? Brother Kwame, can you hear me?
Sorry. Yes, sorry. Chair, can I clarify something? Sister Portia said I was critiquing. No, I was asking a question. Mine were questions, they were not critiques. So I wanted some clarity. Now, what I would like to then put to all of us, not just to the speaker, is if in a capitalist system they have a national health service that looks after everyone's health, is that a revolution? Or if they have a social service system that makes sure that everybody has food to eat, is that a revolution? If a revolution is movements and if the implemented ideas that have positive and healthy impacts on communities and additional beings, does that make it a revolution? So I think that is a question that comes up. So if I'm an enslaved person and my master lives in the big house and I'm living in the outhouse, but I'm well taken care of. When I'm sick, I'm taken care of. The master makes sure that when I go to work, I arrive back on time. I'm well fed. My family is well fed, etc., and yet I am enslaved. Is that a revolution? Because the way the presentation came, it will sound like as long as there are programs, social programs to take care of us within the capitalist system, then somehow it's a revolution. So that's why I'm raising the question. So this one is also a question to the wonderful presenter. Thank you. And I suppose it's also for all of us.
Thank you.
Yeah, to think about. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Brother Kwame.
Chair,
Pardon me that
Chair, pardon that Professor Kwame that you felt that my presentation was saying staying in the system. I will go back and look at it, but it's in my opinion that it was saying get out of the system. What I was doing was saying that these revolutions have not just started in 1945 or 2020. George Floyd, when was George Floyd? It was in 2000, COVID, 2019-20. These revolutions have been going on, and they are saying we have to be out of the system. And no, a national healthcare system is not a revolutionary system. What the Black Panthers were doing with their food programs was revolution, though they were in a racial capitalist system. So in addition to all those things I was talking about, I think in all of the revolutionary movements I saw, we have to have a way of getting out, because usually the banter is, well, it's what we got. We're going to keep working and nothing changes. And that's why I tried to say, let's start at the local, because that's what all of the revolutionaries that I read about did. They always went to the people. And then, of course, you know what happened with assassinations. So thank you for the challenging question. I'll go back to my presentation. I'll look at it again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sister
Chair,
Portia.
Chair, with your permission, you can deny me if you want. I want to push back a little, if it's okay. Is that okay? I'm happy to be quiet so that Sister Alma can speak. Thank you.
Push back a little bit, but not too hard. Let me hear.
Okay. So I want to then also say that is the Black Panthers social program really a revolution? I mean, as it is taking place within the capitalist system in which they are a part of. So if to be a revolution is to come out of a system, and if you are in the system, and taking care of yourselves, is that a revolution? So I'm basically coming back on that. Thank you.
Chair, may I respond, please? Please.
Sure, go ahead.
Professor Kwame, you remember some weeks ago when we were looking at a paragraph and I was saying, is it possible to have socialism and capitalism in a same nation state? And you gave that thorough analysis of how it is. So this is my answer to your question. What if I am a person who doesn't speak the way you and I are speaking? Can I have an internal revolution? I'm not able to speak how you and I are speaking. I speak another way. It's not audible to you. But is that a revolutionary? So this delves into the spiritualness, and this is why I had the spiritual revolution as the first revolution before the cultural. Because when we look at indigenous African communities, what is no doubt, what is crystal clear is that we are first of spiritual, of energies, and then that goes into the cultural. So I would say yes, based on your answer 2 weeks ago. And please, what the Black Panthers were doing was revolutionary. And this is why ancestor Fred Hampton got shot so many times in his dwelling, him and the other brothers. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Portia. Sister Amma. And after Sister Amma, Brother Pigeon, you have put something in the chat. I want you to comment a little bit on that after Sister Amma. And after Brother Pigeon will be Sister Tapua. Sister Amma, the floor is yours, please.
Okay. First of all, a big thank you to Sister Portia for giving us a really packed presentation, and I have asked for a copy of it because actually it's quite a lot to take on and digest. But thank you very much for all the research that you did. In relation to what is a revolution, I actually suggest, and I'm not volunteering to do it because I don't have the capacity, that may be something we can look at, have as a future focus for one of these Saturday sessions. And I actually think that, Sister Portia, there were several things that you highlighted and raised which could be maybe future focuses for these Saturday sessions, because there was a lot packed into what you did, which was very, very, very good. I just want to highlight a couple of things. Number one, and I'm not sure whether it's been mentioned, but today, the 21st of March, 1960, was the day that there was the massacre of Africans protesting against having to carry passes in South Africa, Azania, and I think that needs to be mentioned, and we need to acknowledge that. I assume most of us know of it, but if not, we're talking about Sharpeville-Langa. So that was Africans protesting against the injustices which they experienced. And underpinning all of our discussions, it's about the masses of ordinary people, I'll use that term, not being exploited, oppressed, suffering the injustices which we talk about. So, Sister Portia, I would particularly like to congratulate you on having, and I'm using this word deliberately, the courage to talk about and mention people who are of sexual orientation. I think, again, that is a discussion we can and should have as a whole session. But what I want to highlight is that we should also be very much aware that people who are overtly and identify as gay have contributed to our struggle. And I will highlight one person who many of us may know or should know of. There are others, will be James Baldwin. Okay, but I want to emphasize it as well because, Sister Portia, you had the courage to mention it. I think it's a discussion we need to have because there are what I would call some very anti-human things that some of our people do and have done and continue to do and say against other Africans because of their sexual orientation, which we should not accept in any way. And I'll give one example, which is what is called, what's the term they use, corrective rape of women. So again, I think that's a separate discussion. And Brother Kwame, just to one correction, you mentioned the 1945 Pan-African Congress. It actually happened in Manchester, not in London. And I'm saying that because it's important to understand that our struggles and our organizations happen in loads of different places within the continent and the diaspora. And again, I would like us to look a bit more in detail at the Pan-African Congresses and what Kwame Nkrumah sought to do, but which was undone with the 1966 coup, was to move from the Congresses to the All African People's Conferences, which were very much about rooting the struggle in the masses of ordinary Africans. So at the All African People's Conferences, in particular, people went and were invited because they represented the different liberation movements, women's movements, union movements, youth movements of throughout Africa and the diaspora. But Sister Portia, I think you've done a fantastic job. There are queries and questions that I also have, but I just want to say a big thank you to that. And my very last point is, I think, and this isn't directed at you personally, Sister Portia, we need to think about maybe having a time limit on the presentations to enable greater time for, I'll use the term which Walter Rodney used, grounding with each other, because a lot of our political education comes from having dialogues with each other. No one of us has a monopoly of knowledge and understanding. And Sister Portia, I really salute you for highlighting intellectualism versus whatever. No one of us has a monopoly on knowledge. Each of us can bring something to the table which helps to teach others, and every one of us is on a continuous journey of learning, even those of us who give ourselves the titles that some of us give ourselves. Thank you again, Sister Portia.
Thank you, Sister. Thank you, Sister Amma. Brother Pidgin, can you remind us what Kwame Nkrumah has said what revolution is?
Thank you, Brother Windhoek. Apologies for my lateness. And I was working behind the scene very much to ensure that Sister Portia invite and everything else was in place, despite of too much pressure I was having. And Sister Portia, thank you for this. I haven't been fully in part of your presentation, but I think it's very important that we don't rush with it. And as suggested by Sister Amma first, we might look at the part 2 of your conversation, if allowed, and probably the angle of revolution versus reform that's coming up, because intentionally the topic was not clearly in that line, but it seems that it's coming up based on what Brother Kwame is raising. Now, I will then just mention a bit, and if allowed, that next part will move to that. If allowed, Sister Portia, then we'll be going deep to that revolution thing. But let me just be very quick. I've shared it. Kwame Nkrumah talk about revolution in page 34 of the Consciencism Study Group. He talks about the same when he quotes in chapter 3, the beginning of chapter 3, when he quotes Mazzini. But I think the most important thing, and I will reserve this for now, Brother Windhoek, is that let's have this revolution conversation when we talk about revolution. Because today I believe we are talking a bit on how we actually get ourselves out of that system in the way of the propaganda, or dismantling the propaganda. And then finally, I'll just be very quick to thank a few members who have joined us for the first time. And yes, be assured, the Bishop and everybody else, including Brian and the rest who have joined us for the first time, that we'll continuously get update of our sessions. This is one of our sessions that has been there for 3 years every Saturday. There's Thursday session that has been there for almost 4 years to 5 years. So I'll give more update when I'll be closing up on this. But thank you very much. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Brother Pidgin. Sister Tabua, I see your hand is up. Your hand is down. Yeah.
I'm
Go ahead.
hoping it was up. I think part of what I wanted to say is my sister Aman has already covered. Thank you.
Thank you. Brother Ifo?
Yes, revolutionary greetings to you all.
That's that one.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. I am deeply, deeply in love with the wisdom and guidance that was embedded in what in the presentation. There was so much richness in that. And I would also love to know if we can is this going to be recorded and on YouTube as well? Because I was driving at the time, so I missed some of the visuals that were shared. I would love to be able to see them as well. But
Yes, my
what
brother. All our sessions are
excellent.
recorded.
Excellent. But when I look back at what our ancestors did at the time before the so-called independence, the reason why I say so-called is because apart from potentially, even Burkina Faso is not independent. Most of the former colonial boundaries are still dependent on external methods of thinking, external educational system, external religious and spiritual systems, and also capitalism, which is fundamentally external to us. So I think there's that one of the things that is highlighted in what was shared is for our need to return, as they say in Sankofa, but not just, what I loved about it was that it wasn't just said as a lofty thing without concrete examples, but it also gave us concrete examples of how we can implement these things in ways that are both philosophically sound, but also practically sound. So I am deeply impressed and I am deeply blessed to have
Thank
been
you.
able to experience that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Brother Ifo. Brother Kwame, over to you with the closing remarks, and before we hand over to Brother Pigeon with the announcements.
Yeah, well, the closing remarks has been made by some of us also already, which is that Sister Portia was kind enough to be willing to present to us, and we are asking. So thank you, Sister Portia, for presenting to us, for doing the research, putting together, this presentation, and doing the presentation for us. We are asking members to basically come and present to us on a Saturday with any theme of your choice linked to unification. And Sister Amma is leading our research team. She's asked for those of us in the research team to indicate our areas of interest. And so the presentation is, if you like, an extension of the research. So if you are researching an area that you like or love or you're working in, come and present to us and link it with unification, and to keep our brothers and sisters happy, some like brothers like Ifo, link it with practical examples, and also the theory as well. So thank you, Sister Portia, and thank you also all of you for coming, because it's very important you find time, on every Saturday. Some of you are here every Saturday, sharing, and the sharing you do here is shared on YouTube, and the Pigeon uploads it up onto YouTube, and other people who can't be here listen to them, and they are edified. So thank you all for coming, and thank you for spending your Saturday, 2 hours of your Saturdays with us. So I am Christian
Thank you.
Kwame Agbodza. I am the overseer of the Consciencism Study Group. Thank you, brother. Welcome. Back to you.
Thank you. Brother Pidgin, before you make the announcements, can you please give Brother Coco 1 minute? Brother Coco.
Oh, thank you. I'm humbled. Apologies for coming after the chair. But I would like to also echo the sentiments that have been passed by both Brother Ivo and Sister Ama, Sister Sapua, and everyone about the brilliance of the presentation that Sister Portia has done tonight. We'll say keep it up, sister, and let's see how we can help to enhance it. I will also like to come in to sort of answer the question which Brother Kwame had asked you with regards to revolution. You talked about revolution a lot because revolution is the only thing that can save us as Africans. Because what happened is that we have been captured under reform. For revolution to happen, let's just think of the sun. We always say how many times that the earth revolves around the sun. So revolution is like going 360 degrees from where you were. Let's just remember that. So it's more of the transformation, the radical transformation. So if the economy is doing what it's not supposed to be doing for the people, the economic revolution is actually going counter to what we are saying, 360 degrees to the right thing. So it's a fundamental break with the underlying principle of exploitation for what Sister Portia has been talking about tonight. So it's going back to our cultural way of doing things. It's going back to our way of learning, education, economics, everything. And all of that is tied to unity. Because for us to unite as Africans, we have to unite on our own terms, on our own Afrocentric methods, not just the reformed ways of the colonizer, because that is where we have continued to hemorrhage lots of things. Our economy is still tied to the exploiter because we never really transformed it to benefit our people. So I thank you a lot tonight, comrades. Thank you, Sister Portia, and everyone else.
Thank you, Brother Coco. Like Brother Pidgin has already suggested, there is a need to have a session again on revolution. Brother Pidgin, please, your announcements and closure of the meeting.
Brother Windhoek, thank you for your chairship. Thank you for your chairship, Brother Windhoek, and you've been very helpful to us, especially Brother Windhoek is leading the United Nations of Africa project, which I think we need to come in fully, Brother Windhoek. I know the paperwork is not fully ready by Brother Kwame, but I think it's something we'll be working on very fast so that we can have that project fully running. We believe in the unification of Africa in line with the nations of Africa, what white man called tribes of Africa. We don't believe in the unification of Africa in the line of so-called neo-colonial states. And that's why we have a project called the United Nations of Africa, which Brother Windhoek leads. And Brother Windhoek now is our probably like a permanent chair for the unification, because our Saturday is purely on unification. We invite anybody who is willing to join the chairship of the unification on Saturdays. But above all, we invite more people who are interested to be presenters and on topics we share. Brother Kwame had just shared the screen of the topics that we are going to focus on next week. But I think Sister Portia had prepared something on next week, and maybe from there we can go back based on the guidance on this presentation, maybe part 2. But Sister Portia, just to give you a minute, what was the topic you had proposed for next week? And I believe it's in line with the liberation, if that's our guidance. So next week, as per what Brother Kwame is sharing, we need to look at liberation. So our sessions are organized on the unification, economics, development, and liberation of Africa. And I believe Sister Portia, what was it? But we'll work on it.
King Brother, it's not next week. It's in April, and that's about racial capitalism. It was looking more into what is racial capitalism. That is in April.
Yeah, thank you. Brother Kwame, you can maybe help me define that IFI. I'm not economist that much.
The IFI is illicit financial flows. Illicit.
Yeah, so we'll be looking at that. Oh, yeah, illicit financial flows. I think I did a research on that. But we are inviting members who are economists who can look at that area of illicit financial flows. And if you are interested or you are ready to have a presentation on that, get in touch with me once you do your research so that we can allow you to be a presenter. So we always want a lead presenter, and then the rest of us maybe contribute as questions and the rest. So any one of you get in touch with me if you'll be interested to do a presentation or a research in line with that. Now, having said that, we have new members, as I've said. Probably the Reverend with us here, Archbishop Milton, and I will fit it in within our platform on where we can also discuss what may be the Black theology, which I believe is working on in the American, and how does it fit to our liberation and unification. Brian Ogola from Kenya is one of the young men who leads the Gen Z movement in Kenya, the J25 movement. And maybe when we talk of the revolution, you might also be able to come in if we can share what that movement and the rest of the Gen Z. And I also permit me to recognize the presence of Elder Glenroy, even though maybe he spoke of before. So Elder Glenroy, and also our comrade Philip, and all the comrades of journals, permit me to recognize and appreciate your presence. Now, the recordings for Saturdays have been available on our YouTube channel, which I'll share with all of you. If you got the invite, I'll share with you directly that invite. So the recordings of our previous last sessions on Saturday for the last 2.5 years are all available on our YouTube channel. And this recording will be available as I will be uploading it by earliest next week. And I'll share the link of that recording with all of you via directly on your inbox. So you'll get the link for this recording. Sister Portia has indicated that she has sent the documents for the presentation. I'll equally upload those documents for presentation once she fully approves them, which I think she has done by sharing them, so that all of you will have this presentation via your inbox. And intellectual properties belong to her, not to us. But of course, once shared on our platform, then it's free for public reviews and that. Then our Thursday sessions are going on. We are a Consciencism Study Group, as Brother Kwame has said, our chair. We study Consciencism, which is the book, or Consciencism, which is the book by Kwame Nkrumah, and is a philosophy and ideology for decolonization. So every Thursday, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., I'll also be sharing update with you. And that one, we've been doing it for 4 years online and over 10 years physically with a group of Brother Kwame and the rest. On Mondays, we do a review where we talk a lot of these revolutions by Dr. George Aiti, same time 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., where we look at very defeating dictator by Dr. George Aiti, purely on most of these reforms. We are looking forward as a team, just in the initial stages, how we can come with the political orientation probably for political parties. Because remember, we have the Secretary General of the PSE Azania, and thank you, Sister Ama. Actually, the PSE Azania Secretary General was attending a conference in the past, that which Sister Ama was talking about. We have various political parties with us here from Namibia, South Africa, Sudan, Uganda, and even Ghana and the rest. So we will be looking forward to that as well. The research team is led by Sister Ama. The Pan-African Library is still going on our Telegram channel with almost over 8,000 soft copy books. There's a project that is going on, probably you're finalizing on the unification as well. So we have so many projects that are going on, and please feel free to join us and be part and parcel of our conversation. Having said that, I don't want to take much of your time, but just to appreciate you for your attendance and promise you that you'll get the recordings and invite you for our Monday, Thursday, and the next Saturday session. Thank you for now. May you have a lovely evening to you all. Bye-bye.
Yeah, Brother Pigeon. Brother Pigeon?
Yeah, Brother Kwame, I'm here.
Yeah, sorry about the IFI. It's actually international financial institutions as instruments of control. Yeah.
Oh, so it's national financial institutions, the World Bank, the IMF, and the rest.
As instruments of control over Africa. Hence it's under liberation. My apologies. It's not illicit financial flows. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So you've heard that is the international financial institutions and how they are used as instrument for controls and how we can liberate ourselves from them. So if you have a research in that line, please do your research and get in touch with me so that we can actually share and have you to present for us. Bye-bye for now. Back to you, Chair, Brother Kwame, for you to close.